Welcome to another episode of Mental Health Mondays. It is the week of May 1st, 2023. Holy shit, it's May. Wow. Fifth month of the year. Insane. Just to think back on, New Year's resolutions and all that stuff, and how quickly that theme fades. And then all of a sudden you're smack dab in the middle of the year. It's crazy. We're almost halfway through the fucking year. Absolutely insane to me. It's funny, I don't know if you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm or are familiar with the work of Larry David. Very sarcastic, very observational. And there's a joke on that show, maybe even on Seinfeld too, about when the cutoff point for wishing someone a Happy New Year is. Because people tend to say it a little too far into January. But now on the other side of it, it's like, holy shit, all of a sudden it's not the new year anymore. You can't say that we're in a new year anymore. It is the year. I don't know. None of that makes sense. But anyways, welcome back another week. Congratulations on making it. We're in this bitch. That rule of me not swearing a certain distance into the episode has gone out the window completely since the 1 week that I actually tried not to. Whatever. What are you going to do? I am what I am. This week was a interesting one. More busy. I felt pretty tired this week. I'm still trying to combat that, especially in the sense of mental health wise. I don't know, man. My energy levels aren't great, but I'm doing all the things that people say, like I talked about last week, the optimization type stuff. Not necessarily the more extreme or things that you need to invest in, but as far as drinking a lot of water, which is also probably in the shot right now, my bad. As far as drinking a lot of water, eating the right things, exercising regularly, I'm doing all that stuff. I think maybe the one thing that I really need to improve on is sleep. Even though I do tend to get, 7 to 8 hours a night, it doesn't seem like enough. So I don't know, maybe go to bed a little earlier because I am trying to wake up early every day and all that. I don't know. I don't know why you would care, but I'm just filling you in on this week. I felt, energy levels a little low, especially given having so much to do around the release of a new song. Again, Gravity is now streaming everywhere. Appreciate everyone who's reached out and enjoying it so far. Got to get those numbers up. It's hard not to focus on the numbers. I know you're not supposed to. But also it's I want people to hear the damn song. I didn't release it just to release it. So of course I have to focus on the numbers a little. And in the past with April 94, I kind of had developed a strategy, I guess, or at least learned some tricks of getting the song into that Spotify algorithm, and then it really takes on a life of its own. For any musicians listening, that's the key for sure, is getting into the Spotify algorithmic playlists. And, the Discover Weekly, the Release Radar, all that stuff. If you can trigger that part of the algorithm, the song takes on a life of its own, at least stream, numbers-wise. And that's what's happened with a couple of our old songs and what I'm trying to recreate for all my new music, but it's a little different because I'm starting from zero. And I was actually talking to Scary about this recently, because, he's the only one, obviously, that understands that side of things from at least in my own life and my journey and stuff. And it's I knew starting this whole Frankie IV thing would be starting from scratch, but maybe not as much as, more so even than I realized. I thought that there'd be a little more carryover from April 94 to being a solo artist, and there hasn't been. Which has been I don't know, a rude awakening, I suppose, but also just, it's not really, it just, you learn, oh, okay, well, I have more work to do even than I thought to get it off the ground and really getting it moving. And it's funny too, when you look at things from, April 94 is done, at least that's, yeah, it is. And, so now looking back on certain decisions we made, certain things we accomplished, certain things we didn't accomplish, it's funny because being someone who is now at absolute ground zero, the complete starting point, starting from complete scratch, looking at all the things we did and the amount of years it took to get to where we were, it's like, whew, it's kind of daunting, because now I'm thinking back on all of the things that I had to do, and maybe some things that I haven't been doing for, as a solo artist. And it's just, I don't know, not intimidating, but it is a bit like, oh shit, I gotta kind of recreate some of that juice and that mojo that we had going with that, because it was really starting to pay off. And that's one of those things. It's like, again, when we were in the middle of it, I think probably both of us felt, or at least I know I felt like, man, we're not getting to where we should be or where we want to go, right? And now looking at it from an outside perspective, even though I was part of it, if I feel very out of it now, I look at that and I'm like, wow, we were doing really great. So it's like, okay, I see a path towards success, or I see things that I've done before that have been proven to work in different areas, and I need to start doing more and more and more of those things. So this week was kind of like a reminder of that, releasing the new song, and maybe it not like jumping like some of our stuff would initially. And it's tough for me because I feel like it's a different, I don't know, it's a different type of thing. It's not the same thing as like rooting for a group. The whole image is different. I'm still kind of figuring out how to shape my image, and I have to continually tell myself like that nothing is corny, because that I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to that aspect of things. Just feeling like, I don't know, I want to be authentic and true to myself, but maybe sometimes I need to break out of my comfort zone and like do things that I feel are a little cheesy, but no one else would feel are cheesy, I don't know. So that's what's been running through my head this past week, on a personal level. And then also I hinted to last week, this, April 29th being a difficult day for me, because April 29th is my father's, was the day my dad passed in 2009. And so this past April 29th, yesterday, Saturday, was 14 years since I lost my father. And saying that out loud is in some ways a miracle, because I never thought I would make it this long without him. In the beginning, obviously in the beginning stages of mourning, you feel like there is no way the sun will ever shine again. And there are still days where it feels that way, but I don't know, this year felt almost a little different, where of course I took my time to be sad and kind of sit with my thoughts on his anniversary. But in a lot of ways, I was almost feeling like this weird sense of pride or happiness, because there was a version of myself that never thought I would make it to be able to say it's been 14 years since my dad died. And so I guess that's my message to anyone dealing with grief right now, whether it's fresh or whether it's been, whether you experienced it a while ago, a great loss. This too shall pass. And I'm not saying that it ever gets easy. It doesn't. But it does. You do find ways to cope, hopefully healthy ones. And you just experience grief in a different way as the days and months and years pass. And, not a day goes by. All these cliche things, not a day goes by where I don't think about them. It's true. It's genuinely true. But those feelings turn a lot less dark as time goes on, and it's more happy thoughts. Obviously missing him, and every situation is different, but for me, obviously missing him is very difficult. Something I have to catch myself doing is dwelling on the things that he's missing. But generally speaking, now that I am older, wiser, have kind of dealt with it in my own way, I truly feel like I'm at a point with it where most of my thoughts about him, most of those memories are happy ones. And for a long time, I felt a sense of guilt that's how I felt. Say it took 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 years for me to start feeling that way about his loss. I felt a sense of guilt, like I felt like because of how much I love my dad and how much he meant to me and means to me, and every day I find new ways that he has infiltrated my psyche or like has passed on lessons to me that I never realized as a 15-year-old when I lost him. As much as like those are everyday thoughts, there are times where I feel like he meant so much to me that I should be sadder or I should be depressed about it. Even though, as everyone says, it's a go-to for people to say to someone or who they care about if they're mourning the loss of someone, oh, they wouldn't want, they would want you to be happy. They wouldn't want you to do this or that. And that is true. My dad, over everything, wanted me to be happy. And was my biggest fan, my biggest supporter in literally everything I did. My sister used to make fun of me because she'd be like, your dad would literally be proud of you for taking a shit. And he really, really was to that level. Like, and every interaction I have with people who I don't know, who knew my father, always say like, you were his pride and joy and all those very sweet things that feel good to hear. But, yeah, I know he wouldn't want me to be sad or depressed for too long, but there are times where I almost have felt a sense of guilt, like I should be because of how much he meant to me. You know what I'm saying? Like he left losing him left such a gaping hole in my heart and in my head that once I started to get to a point where most of my thoughts about it were positive, that I've started feeling like, oh no, I should be sad. And that's a really weird place to be in because it's coming from it's coming from a good place in my heart. Like I want to be sad about it because of how much I love and care about him. He was such a great person. He deserves to be mourned, right? But also that's a horrible thing to be like tricking yourself into depression or sadness or like extreme grief. So that's something that I've had to kind of like tackle as I've gotten older and as I've processed losing him in different ways. And, I don't feel guilty so much anymore about maybe not being as sad as often. But I do think now my way of dealing with having that feeling at one point in my life is that I purposely, at times when I'm really missing him or when I'm really thinking about him or when things aren't going great in my life and those times where I really wish I could sit down and have a conversation with him, I let my brain go there. I let my brain go to the dark reaches of grief and missing him and not force it, not like force cry, but it is such a great release to really sit in those feelings instead of completely ignore them, because it's the double-edged sword. Like you do want to get to a place where you can positively think about memories of a lost loved one, but you also don't want it to be in a way where you're masking that completely, and it's fake. And I don't necessarily think that's what my predicament is, but I do feel like I've gotten to a place where I can kind of sit with the darker side of those thoughts, and I don't know, like feel them, because sometimes it feels good to be sad about it. It doesn't mean that I don't love and miss him when I think about him and have a smile on my face, or go a few days without thinking about him because I'm busy with my life and all those things. But it does feel good for me to take that time every so often and kind of let myself go to that place that I was trying to avoid for so long, because I know how to like get back out of it. I know that it's not necessarily going to mean weeks of not leaving the house or being afraid to move or any of the other very strange things that come with extreme grief. So I don't think I really did that a lot this year, this time around. I suppose I'm just mentioning this because it's something that has helped me as I've progressed through the process of grieving, and it is a process. There's a reason why every psychiatrist, every psychologist, every therapist says that, because grief is a process. And if you have recently lost someone, you might be listening to this and thinking, what the hell are you talking about? How am I ever going to get to that place? And I understand, and those feelings are completely understandable and rational, and you should feel those feelings right now. That's okay. But I'm also here to tell you, on the outside looking in, just like with the aspect of looking back on the totality of what April 94 was now, even though I have experienced this thing, I am on the outside of it to a certain extent that I can look back and pick out pieces of it that went well, things that didn't go well. One thing I can tell you from being on the side of grief that I am on is that it will get easier. It doesn't ever get easy. If you lost someone that meant something to you, of course it never gets easy. It's why I don't know, we tend to like kind of brush over the concept of a breakup with a relationship. We don't put it in the same category as losing a parent or losing a child, losing a loved one, which I understand because it's a completely different thing, but there are a lot of similarities. And so even if you're recently going through a breakup, someone you really care about and loved, even if it's your choice to end the relationship, even if you know that in the long run it's better for the both of you, it can feel like losing someone fully. It can feel like that person has died, and in some ways they have died in your life, right? I liken it to like the permanency of losing a loved one. Sometimes it can feel like that with a breakup. It feels so permanent, and that's so difficult to wrap our minds around because of just the way we're wired to think. You go from spending time with this person every day, loving this person with all your heart, like kind of building this life together, whatever it may be, and then they're just gone out of your life forever. And then not only is it that it maybe you don't want to communicate with this person or they don't want to communicate with you, but that you literally can't communicate with this person, right? There's certainly that's an added aspect if you've ever been ghosted, where it's like you just want to talk to this person again. You just want to express yourself to this person again. And you just can't. And in that way, it's very similar to losing a loved one to death. So I empathize with people who are going through that or have gone through that as well, because, again, not that it's the same thing. It's certainly not the same thing. And the one big difference between going through a breakup and mourning the loss of someone is that a lot of the times it's for the better. And you can't say that about losing a loved one. I don't think it's for the better that my dad died when I was 15 years old and that he died before he was 50. I don't think that's for the better. Now, do I regret anything or would I change it if I can or could? Yeah, of course I would, right? I'd give up pretty much anything in my life, withstanding people and relationships. I'd give up pretty much anything to have him here with me on a day-to-day basis. But obviously that's not reality. Can't get caught up on that. But just saying, like, my life has turned out exactly the way it was supposed to up to this point. I do believe that. I force myself in a lot of times to believe that. But with that said, as much as I don't regret like decisions I've made or mistakes I've made, would I change that if I could? Yeah, my life would be completely different. And in those ways, it's like, I would have not met certain people and had certain experiences and gone down this path if he had never passed. And so there are things I cherish about this path that probably would have been completely different if he never passed, that, I would have missed out on if he was still here. Now, would I sacrifice literally every single one of those things for him to be here? Of course. But that's just not the way it works. That's not the way it worked out. That's not the way things happened for me. That's not the way God intended, the universe intended, whatever it may be. And in a main character syndrome way, right? We talk about that a lot. Something that I have struggled with and still struggle with in terms of grief and grieving the loss of my dad is like, why? Not necessarily why, like, why did he have to get this rare form of cancer and like it's not fair? Yes, of course that. But more so why and like what was the utility for the earth and the universe and the way of life and, the way all living things interact, what was the use of him being chosen or him dying when he did? That kind of why. And applying it to my own life, for a long time, it's been kind of like, okay, well, he had to go early to show me what life, I don't know. To me, the biggest thing that I can draw from losing my dad when I was 15 is that life is short. Nothing is promised. I'm sure that a lot of people who have lost people to sudden things, accidents, not necessarily long-term illnesses, have really felt this, but my dad's was a long-term illness, but it was something very rare, something that should have been cosmetic. It was skin cancer that eventually metastasized to his bone marrow and his lymphatic system. So being that it was such not a quote-unquote normal disease, right? At least in my eyes at that time, the biggest lesson I took from it was you just don't have control over almost anything. And so that mixed with my mom being in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, for most of my most of my teenage years and into my 20s, and the Serenity Prayer and having that experience with my father really have always driven home in my head to focus on the things I can control and try to completely eliminate the things I can't control from my psyche. And so as far as the question of why, that I have consistently asked myself over the past 14 years, that's the biggest answer, or the thing that has stuck out to be something that makes sense in my head as an answer to the question of why. That he somehow was, for me, other than showing me how to be a good person, which I strive to. I'm not always a good person. I'm not always perfect. No one is. He wasn't a perfect person, but he was a damn good person and a great man. And I'm so blessed and lucky to have had him as a father. So other than showing me, what a proper father figure should be and what they should do and the influence they can have on especially a young man growing up, him being taken so early, to me, was to show me just that none of this is promised and that it all ends one day. And I suppose that you could get that lesson from like losing a goldfish when you're like 6 or 7, but to me, this was the thing that drove that concept home. And it's what I've been using all along. It's what's fueled me in the times where I have felt like maybe my dreams and goals are too lofty. What I always can fall back on is, what does it fucking matter at the end of the day? I lost my dad when I was 15. He never should have died then. He was, outside of having cancer, like worked a really hard manual labor job, was in pretty decent health, could have taken, that's another thing that I should shelf for later, but I don't want to lose my train of thought. It's just having a conversation with my girlfriend about this because of the different health issues she's been dealing with and how Western medicine has kind of failed her, and just the way that this country specifically looks at medicine and views like treating things, curing things, and I don't know, their lack of emphasis on things outside of medicine that can help us. And we were talking about, specific to her issues, like how we could change our diet and how we could do exercise, all these things that I've talked about on here multiple times, and how, like, okay, we've explored every option medically so far, but we haven't really dove whatever, in, full bore to that avenue of things. And because it was the day before, it was April 28th, so obviously this has been in my head, that is my dad's anniversary, and it made me think, like, he died 14 years ago. None of that stuff was, like, in the lexicon at all. I mean, granted, I was 15, I was young, being 15 years old, 14, 15 years old, is a tumultuous time for anyone, any young person. Body's changing, life is changing, interpersonal relationships are taking form and all that stuff. So maybe I was just ignorant to it. But I was in those rooms with those doctors, and I heard the phone calls, and my mom has never sheltered me from anything in my life, so she was always very upfront with me. But my dad was the type to shelter me, but my mom was not, so she was always very upfront with me about what was going on. I never heard something like an alkaline diet or eating these foods and exercising. Now, granted, by the time my dad came to live with my mom and I, because I grew up in the tri-state area, and then my mom and I moved up to Rochester. My dad stayed down there, so until he got really sick, he was down there in and out of the hospital, Beth Israel Hospital in New York City. And so, at that point, maybe he was too far gone. He had already been diagnosed, 6 months to a year to live, all those things. But you hear stories nowadays of people who, whatever it might be, different strokes for different folks, different things work for different people's DNA and makeup and all that stuff. But again, I just never felt like I ever heard things like an alkaline diet or vegan diet, or which now, of course, that was the trend for a while in the health world, and now people are saying that that's bad for you. Of course, it's different for every person. But in terms of cancer, you hear that quite a bit nowadays. Different ways that it can be combated that aren't necessarily chemo or radiation or experimental medicines. And my dad was at a educational hospital, so all of his treatments were experimental because they felt that traditional, cancer treatments were not going to work. I know I had gotten sidetracked from my main point, but just that is an interesting thing to me because I think, again, as I said before, one of the things that I've struggled with the most in losing him was thinking about the things he's missed in my life, things that I wish he could have seen: getting my driver's license, graduating high school, meeting a girlfriend, like a serious girlfriend that I had, seeing the birth of my niece and nephew. There's countless things, like, silly things like sports. I always think, if you watch the podcast, I'm a huge baseball fan. I got that from him. His love of the Yankees, my grandfather's love of the Yankees. Never missed a game when I was a kid. I was indoctrinated, basically. He doesn't know who Aaron Judge is. Like, that kind of shit blows my mind. Now, all of those things are silly and very based on my perception of my life. But then it makes me think of things like, damn, he died at a time where these treatments weren't an option. These facts weren't known. He missed the entire pandemic. He missed the entire presidency of Trump. He missed most of the presidency of Obama. World events, like musicians he would have liked that came out after he died. Of course, him hearing my music. All of those things, to me, those are normal things to think and to ponder and to opine. That's a good word. So long as that they do not control your actions and do not control your every thought. And that's why I feel like I've developed that ability to, hey, I haven't really spent time, quote unquote, spent time with my dad recently. Let me go in a room by myself, look at some pictures, look at old videos, and sit in that sadness and really, let those thoughts come to me and deal with them as they come, and then put them back in the shelves that they belong, not eliminate them. It's okay to have them, put them back, in the closet of my head, and then go about my day with a smile, knowing, hey, I had such a great relationship with him. He was the best guy I could have ever asked for I almost just said it in a really bad way, to be my dad. I'm really grateful for that. And I know how many people didn't have a father figure in their life. And I've seen over the years more and more how important it is to have a good father figure in your life, a good parental figure, whether it be your mom or your dad. So most of my thoughts are just of gratefulness and, of course, the natural, damn, I wish you were here to see this. But I've gotten to a place where most of it is positive, and I cherish that. So again, to sum all that up, this being the 14th year without him, it was the first time where I felt, when really processing some of this stuff on April 29th, that I felt a sense of like happiness that I made it this far. Because again, I never thought I would. It's not like dealing with depression and anxiety over the last however many years. It was not all caused by the loss of my dad, but certainly was a big factor. And so in those low moments where I used to not be able to process it, I really just felt like I wouldn't be alive by the time saying 14 years have passed, you know? I really didn't think, and I know I talked about something similar to this a couple weeks ago, again, not to worry you, just being transparent and honest. I never really thought that I'd make it this far without him. And it's just crazy. Next year will be 15 years. I was 15 when he died. That'll mark half my life. I will have lived just as long with him as I have without him. And that one's mind-blowing. I'd like to make that one special. I'd like to do something, you know, early on when you're grieving, you come up with certain ways to honor the person on the day of their death. And I think that's really nice. Like the first couple of years, me and my mom would always plant something. My mom likes gardening and stuff. And obviously I still lived at home when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So we'd always, every year, we'd like plant, not like, you know, a flower, like something. I actually have flowers and shit. I don't know. I don't know much about gardening. I was trying to say something that would come back again the next year, especially it being in April, and that's when you start doing that kind of stuff. But, you know, that fell to the wayside eventually. Or like we'd like get a balloon and release, like those things are nice, but they fall to the wayside. Next year, it being half of my life without him, I would like to do something special. So I don't know what that'll be. I'll think of something, and we'll see. We'll see what that is. But I'm not that I wasn't sad yesterday. I did let myself go there a little, but also I don't know. It's and this is where the sense of guilt comes in, right? I missed his birthday this year, and I felt really guilty about that. And I know I talked about that in some previous episodes as well. And again, it's not wrong for me to feel guilty. Like I understand if I missed his birthday when he was alive, I would feel guilty, you know? So it's not bad that I felt a sense of like, oh man, am I not a good son? You know, that kind of silly stuff that we all go through at times. But I'm just proud of myself and happy that I've gotten away from that aspect of grief where I really felt at times guilty or like I should be worse than I was, because at one point I was worse, you know? And it was like I combated my own progress of mental health and of grief and all that stuff just because I thought I wasn't hurting enough. That's crazy talk. That's a horrible, horrible way to look at any aspect of your mental health. You know, you should embrace change. You should embrace progress. And so this year I really did that, and I'm really happy for that. And again, it falls back on perspective. I've been stressed out about this or that in my everyday life, in my career, my relationship, whatever it might be. And then, you know, it's like, wow, it's been 14 years since I lost my dad. It's been a really long, crazy, hard road. Love him to death, miss him. It immediately snaps my head back into like the proper perspective of where I should be. It's like perspective is the word I keep beating to death, but I think priorities would be another one to add to the list of P words that are important when it comes to your mental health. Perspective is key, but also like prioritizing the things that really help you go through life happy, you know, whether it be small or big things. Just why it falls in this, again, same kind of category as perspective, but like, why would I prioritize something that really does not matter or affect me more so than I prioritize these 10 things that really do affect me and are of much more importance to my everyday life, to every aspect of life that I talk about when I talk about, oh, I'm stressed about this, about my career. I'm stressed about this, about nothing, really, literally about nothing. Why am I prioritizing things that don't matter at all to fixing those things more so than the things that could actually help me combat some of the things that I'm worried about? So as much as it was it's a sad thing, a sad day, I'm grateful that it helped me reset that. I clearly talk about this all the time. Sorry, I'm stuttering a little. That I'm a person that needs those resets. I get in these very good loops of saying the right things, feeling the right things, doing the right things, and then, like anyone, I'll just get a little bit askew and fall off my axis just a bit and start like leaning in the wrong direction until I realize, I got to compensate and go back this way. The key is to not overcompensate and teeter all the way to the other side, and then now you got a new list of problems that you need to recalibrate. But to me, for my own sake, my own life, having the ability to kind of reset and realign my thinking, my whatever it might be, when I recognize it going too far has been a godsend, because I used to not be able to do that. And then I'd slip off into a state of depression and high anxiety and high depersonalization for weeks or months at a time. And speaking of, losing my dad and how that taught me just how precious and short life is, I don't want to waste months of my life being depressed. And I'm really grateful that I have gotten to a place where I don't need to do that. And I hope that you can too, and at least take some of what I'm saying and try to twist it and apply it to how it might work for you, because I really do feel like I'm in a good place. As much as sometimes I get on here and feel like I'm not, or might go through a hard day or hard week, whatever it might be. And that's just life. That's what happens. I just saw that I said earlier, this too shall pass. Ironically, I wasn't quoting what I'm about to quote, but I did see it right before I hopped on this podcast. So maybe subconsciously that's where I got it from in that moment. But I just saw a video of like Tom Hanks, who I don't know anything about other than I love him as an actor, and people have their own opinions about him, whatever. It's a video of him talking about things, maybe you wish you had known when you were younger, when you were struggling with something. And his thing that he said was he wished he had known, the mantra, the phrase of "this too shall pass." Coming from a place of when things are really bad, this too shall pass. When you're anxious, depressed, this isn't going well, this too shall pass. But also, when you think you have it all figured out and things are all good, this too shall pass. It's never going to be all or the other. It's always ebbs and flows. Everything in life, it ebbs and flows. It's all about balance. And again, I cherish the fact that if nothing else, losing my dad, going through the process of grief, going to the depths of my mind where things are not so great and not so bright and cheery and fun and laughy and happy and good times, getting to sit with that for as long as I did and realize, all right, I have the ability to pull myself up out of it and just adjust just a little. Again, I still let my brain go to those places in certain times, but I feel like now I can utilize it to my strength, like utilize it as a strength rather than a weakness, rather than slip and fall and not be able to get back up. I can look over that cliff, see the things that are down there that are trying to tear me down, sit with them for a moment, communicate with them almost, and then be like, all right, see ya. You guys are going to stay down in that pit, and I'm going to keep walking down this path. So again, I would give anything to have him back in my life on a day-to-day basis, not, in the ethereal sense of he's always with you. I believe in that. I do believe in that. I actually feel like I manifested that yesterday. I'll explain that in a second. Of course, I would give anything for him to be here in the physical world, but I am grateful for the lessons it has taught me and the person it's made me, and again, if you're going through something like this, it might sound dumb to hear that, like, no, fuck that, I wish that I still had this person. And I understand, because that's never going to escape. Not to scare you, but that's never going to go away. And it shouldn't. You love the person. As much as death is inevitable for all of us, all things living on earth are going to die, it still seems like one of those things that as humans, we just can't wrap our minds around, the permanency of it. And the questioning, what comes next? I don't know the answers to those things. And I can't tell you that it's not going to feel awful at times for the rest of your life. when you lose someone. But I know for a fact it is possible as time goes on, as you heal, as you seek therapy and learn to cope in healthy ways, that it can be used as a strength. I think about oftentimes like having children and every parent wants better for their child than they had, and that's always the goal. And I think for the most part, as a society, we have achieved that. As much as parenting is weird now and things are different and whatever, mostly we have gotten to a point where like you're raising your kids in a more efficient, better way, more loving way than your parents did you. Even if you had great parents, and I had great parents, but of course there are things that you recognize or see, and as time goes on, we become wiser and we realize like, oh, maybe that's not the best way to go about things. I of course want a better life for my kids than I had, even though I had a great life. I have a great life. But it's interesting because I do cherish the perspective that I have on life based on some of the things that I went through that were really difficult and really awful and that I wouldn't want my kids to go through. And so I think the quest as parents, and I'm saying this from a completely uneducated perspective because I don't have kids and I won't have kids for hopefully a little while. But I think the goal as parents is somehow to instill the lessons of your trauma in your child without letting them experience trauma so much as you did. And I think that's tough. Like, even like meeting people I want to be friends with or people I want to have relationships with, it's like, are you damaged enough to like have a dark sense of humor but not be like a complete psycho? And that's kind of how I feel about like eventually when I have kids. Like, I don't want to fuck you up or do horrible things to you or like have you experience anything but bliss and joy in your childhood. But at the same time, you need to feel a little, you need to trek through that mud a little to like be a well-grounded person. At least that's my ignorant perspective because I did have to go through those things. Maybe there are some really great, well-rounded people who have had a pretty like steady, easy life. But that's all besides the point. But it's just something interesting I think about sometimes. Like, I want my kids to have a better life than me, but also I like the way I think, and I'm pretty sure the only reason I think the way I do is because I went through some really shitty things. I don't know how to balance that. I guess when I have kids, hopefully I'll have more clarity on that and can answer it better. But again, grief is a motherfucker. It's not going to be easy, but it does get easier, and you are more than capable of utilizing it to your strengths and at least getting to a place where most of your thoughts on the past are happy and not ones of, not purely bad, not purely the negative side of things. And if you're in that place right now, it's okay. It's understandable, but seek the help you need. And if not, maybe listening to this can give you a little bit of, different perspective on that, because like I said, I didn't think it was possible when I was in the thick of it, but now on the outside of it, I'm living proof that it is possible. So I'm really grateful for that. But perspective is huge, and I keep wanting to say prioritization. I don't even know if that's a word. Perspective and priorities. And those are the two things that I feel like can really shape the way you think, the way you move through life. And, I've been on that. Not to like be like, I told you so, I knew it. But I have been feeling that way for a long time. And then I just started reading this book. I look so smart because I have a book on the desk. I started reading this book, and it's all centered around that. The book is Starry Messenger, Cosmic I can't fucking speak. I can't speak. And clearly I can't read it either. The book is Starry Messenger, Cosmic Perspectives on Civilization by Neil deGrasse Tyson. And obviously, yeah, he doesn't know me, and 10 people listen to this podcast, so I'm not saying this because I'm being told to say this. I just feel like I want to share. I've said all along, like, I'll share articles and books that I read with people who also want to learn about mental health, and I haven't done any of that. But I finally started reading this book. I just finished this other Action Bronson book that was cool, but it has nothing to do with this kind of stuff. I'm like a third of the way through, and it's just looking at human issues, global issues, geopolitical issues, all world issues, whether it be tiny interpersonal things we do on a day-to-day basis or governmental decisions, from the perspective of the cosmos, from the perspective of space. One person will get that reference. And just, imagine being able to look at the Earth from the moon, right? And just to put in perspective how fucking tiny and insignificant we are. And imagine if we're that tiny and insignificant, how tiny and insignificant are our issues compared to the vast expansion of the universe. So it's things like that. And that kind of stuff interests me. I love space. I love science. I love, I was pretty good in school, but at a certain point I smoked too much pot and I didn't give a fuck anymore. But now as an adult, I realized, I've always loved learning and I love all kinds of shit like that. So for me, I've loved the book so far. But I just want to read this one passage, this one quick little paragraph about, he talks about objective truths and subjective truths, meaning like a personal truth, like something that is true to me, something I truly believe to be true versus something that is objectively true that cannot be argued based on science, right? And he talks about the concept of beauty. And it's something that I always talk about with friends or just something I talk about with myself. I talk to myself all the time. Something I constantly am thinking about is like, in the world we live in today, the use of filters and Photoshop and, not only to me is using a filter on your picture, that's already the second filter you've put on that picture because you already filtered it through your own psyche, your own brain of, is this good enough for other people to see? So we already use the filter of, no, I don't like this picture, or this isn't cool enough, I don't look good enough, whatever it might be. This isn't professional enough. And then on top of that, you add some filter that makes you look like a completely different human being. And so we're feeding each other a complete bullshit lie, not real version of ourselves on a day-to-day basis and getting inundated and like tricking ourselves, knowing that when we post something, it's not necessarily perfectly true and authentic to ourselves, yet we're taking in all this content from other people, believing in some way or another that this is them, when it's not. So even if you don't use filters and Facetune and all these apps that unfortunately primarily affect women, it seems, and it's horrible and it's sad, even if you don't use those things, you've already put a filter on your photo by just sorting through the ones that you don't like, right? That's one filter. Then you add another filter by completely changing your appearance as if it matters. You are beautiful. You're every human being. I'm not trying to be like rah, like, I don't know, everything is good. I'm not, listen, I get it. We all are self-conscious about different things, but dude, you're a human being. It's okay. It's not that serious. It's really not. Any sort of gain you could get out of making your appearance look better than it actually is not something you really want in your life. It's just fucked up, and you're really the only person you're lying to is yourself. As much as we kind of all believe that what we're seeing in some way is real, the main person you're lying to when you post something that is heavily edited and heavily filtered is you. And it's sad to me because I genuinely feel like it comes from a place of self-consciousness. You talk to a female about this sometimes, and it's like, I've said this before, where it's like, all right, I'm a guy. I don't think that looks good. I'm telling you, I don't know who this is for, but everyone can tell that this picture is edited and through a filter, whatever it might be. And oftentimes the response will be, well, it's not for you. It's not for the approval of a man. Okay, I can only take you at your word for something like that. But then who's it for? Because you are a beautiful human being. You don't need to lie to yourself when you look at this photo of yourself and think, oh, that's actually how I look. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I know that it comes from a place of self-consciousness, even if you can't admit it. So those things bother me. Obviously, you saw that I just got a little amped up. That bothers me because it's like you're damaging your own self-image by editing yourself to the extent that we all do. It's not healthy. It's not good. Listen, social media can be an incredible tool for finding new creative people that you like, or finding people you want to connect with on the business side of things. But it can also be the worst fucking poison that you could ever be ingesting. Post after post after post of fake things, fake people. This is not what human beings look like. It's unbelievable. And yet we still do it over and over and over again, and it gets worse and worse. And it's just sad to me. I don't know if it started with like plastic surgery and all these things, and you see a celebrity and they kind of look like that because they don't actually look like that, because they had to get surgery to look like that. So then we try to conform, and the only, obviously we can't all afford plastic surgery and nose jobs and fucking whatever the hell, nip and tuck this and that. So what do? We put a filter on our face. And then we don't look like that, but then we look at that picture and go, oh, I look good in this picture. You don't even look like that picture. That's not even you. So this book talks about that concept from the perspective of what an alien would see if he came to this planet. So that if you know me, you know this is fucking perfectly up my alley. Like, oh, what? Mental shit and also aliens and stuff? I'm going to read it quick because I got to wrap up pretty soon anyway. This might be dumb. I've never read anything on here, but I'm going to read it. I think you'll enjoy it. It's also better when I read it in my head because I can perfectly picture Neil deGrasse Tyson's in my voice in my head, and it's absolutely silky smooth butter, and it's amazing. But I'm going to read it to you because I really took something from it, and it drives home the point that I was just getting at. The aesthetics of what is beautiful and desired in culture typically shifts from season to season, year to year, and from generation to generation, especially regarding fashion, art, architecture, and the human body. Based on the size of the cosmetics industry and the larger beauty industrial complex, visiting space aliens would surely think that we think we are ugly beyond repair, in persistent need of improvements. We've designed household tools to straighten curly hair and to curl straight hair. We invented methods to replace missing hair and to remove unwanted hair. We use chemical dyes to darken light hair and to lighten dark hair. We don't tolerate acne or skin blemishes of any kind. We wear shoes that make us taller and perfumes that make us smell better. We use makeup to accentuate the good and suppress the bad elements of our appearance. In the end, there's not much real about our appearance. The beauty we've created is not even skin deep. It washes off in the shower. Dude, we gotta stop with this shit. He's so fucking right. If an alien came down, and for some reason, of all the things they had to study, that's the aspect of humanity this alien was designated to study. Why wouldn't he think we hate ourselves? And do we hate ourselves? Is it the constant comparison to other people who don't actually exist? We follow not only do we follow people who we'll never interact with in real life, who are complete fakers. And this is not, again, I'm not like judging you. It's just unfortunately the norm. Not only do we follow people we'll never meet in real life, who have no impact on our actual day-to-day life, our happiness, our decisions, our welfare, our futures, but we're also only getting the most filtered version of whatever it is that they got for you. And yet we care about following these people. We care about seeing what they're up to. It's incredible to me. And again, I'm guilty of it too. But when you sit back and think, okay, if an alien were to come down, right, and see that this is what we have become obsessed with, and we only put versions of ourselves out there that we deem acceptable or that we deem good enough, even though every aspect of you should be good enough as is, why wouldn't they think that we hate ourselves? But my question is, do we hate ourselves? Or are we just so in our own head and so self-conscious that we feel that the only way to go about things is to put this fake persona up of ourselves? Is it an evolutionary thing? Is it an advantage to, like a peacock shows the male peacock shows its beautiful feathers before mating to try to attract a mate? Is that what we're doing by positioning ourselves? But the thing is, that peacock's feathers actually look that way. And we don't look how we look on social media. Why? Obviously, when on a dating app, right, you're only going to put the best pictures of you that you have. You're not going to put a bad picture of you. Like, I get that. But it's just like, it's everything we do is filtered. And that's the problem with the mental health thing. And it's changing drastically. I really, truly believe that. More and more people are talking about it. More and more people feel comfortable to be open about it, as they should. And that's excellent. But generally speaking, we put everything we fucking do through a filter. whether it be literally putting a filter on a photo or the filter of our own mind saying yes or no, this is, no one can see this ever, or hey, I want people to see this. It's crazy. And to me, it's just overwhelmingly negative. Overwhelmingly negative. You have to be intentional about what you see and what you do and what you take in, just like we're intentional with what we eat, or you should be intentional about what you eat, what you drink, the movies we watch, the shows we watch, the people we choose to interact with regularly. That needs to all be applied to the things we're seeing online, the things we're putting online. I don't know. It's difficult for me to see a way out, but at least if you can understand that, that's the first step. Admitting that that is an issue is the first step. Just like in Alcoholics Anonymous, admitting you are powerless over this thing is the first step, right? There's a lot of steps to go before we can change that, but I can't help but feel it needs to change. That's not good for anyone. Not good on the receiving end to see this fake bullshit, and not good on the outputting this fake bullshit. It's no good. No bueno all around. Listen, thank you so much for listening again. If you are going through immense grief right now, whether it be like me after a long period of time or it's a fresh thing, I'm here for you, man. I understand how hard it can be, how difficult it can be, but I am living proof, I promise, that though it never gets easy, it does get better. It does get better. And really, what more can you ask for than better? You're never going to get best. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. But if you can slowly work towards better, okay, you're moving in the right direction. And just don't forget to do the things that you need to actually do to get better. You have to be proactive about that stuff. It's not just going to snap in your head one day and be like, oh, I'm all good. You have to go to those depths and flirt with the awful side of things, but also be able to pull yourself back out of there and use only the positive things that you can take from the negative things instead of using the whole part of it. See, you should put a filter on the negative things, negative thoughts in your life. Of course, I come to that conclusion at the end of the episode, but that makes sense, right? Talking about all this filter bullshit. You see something horrifically negative, put that filter on and take what you need from it and discard the rest because it's not going to help you in any way. It does get better. I truly feel proud and happy for myself on an individual level that I made it as long as I have. And I hope I can get to a point where I can say it's been 60 years since my dad passed. And I never thought I would feel that way even. So, it just goes to show you just got to keep moving forward. You don't know how you're going to feel about something 10 minutes from now. And all you can do is keep moving forward. Also, again, I know I was kind of joking about reading from this book. Really dope book. Super dope. If you like reading, which you should. Honestly, can we unplug a little? Use your brain. Listening to books on tape, that's fine. As long as you're getting the information in one way or another, that's great. And I believe he does read it, so that's incredible because he got the fucking dopest voice ever, at least to me. And I don't agree with everything he says or does. By the way, that's kind of the point of the book. Is healthful disagreement, which luckily is becoming trendier and trendier because that's the way things should move instead of hating someone the second they don't share the same opinion as you. But anyways, I really like his perspective on the cosmic perspective. I highly recommend it to anyone who's interested in listening to me for an hour. This is a great investment of your time. But also, I would recommend reading it. It's not, however long it takes you, to me, it feels good to use my brain. I know that sounds silly, but it really does feel good to use my brain. Highly recommend this book. Stream Gravity. Please. More songs to come, more music to come. But again, thank you so much for listening. Take care of yourself this week. Do something nice for yourself. Do something nice for someone else. I got to remember I got this. You got to remember you got this. And if not, we got this. We got this together. You can do whatever it is you set your mind to. I know it's fucking cliche, but it's true. Just keep moving. You got this. Thank you again for listening. I'll see you next week. Peace out.